sometimes I'll play both songs and get them to tell me which one they like and which one they don't like. And in this case, maybe if they chose Mama, I'm Coming Home, what I would do is play it again and pause it right before the home part. So it's like, Mama, I'm coming. And then I pause it and they sing and they're actually participating in the song and not just being passive observers. We might do something like count how many times they have to say the word home when we're singing. Or if I was doing pink houses, I might get them every time they hear the word pink houses to raise their hand. And then I get to informally assess whether or not they're following what's going on and participating. I wouldn't only do this one time. We might do a song that they like several times over throughout the course of the theme. And I might introduce more songs. There's a lot of songs about houses, and when I was reviewing this, I try to keep it adult content as much as possible. And they feel honored and respected when I introduce them to some typical Canadian rock music. I do use children's songs sometimes, but very sparingly. And when I use those, I explain to them that they can also listen to those songs with their children. And, when you're crazy and silly, they enjoy that. And so they can mimic that sort of behavior and enjoy themselves as well. And then from there, so we've got to narrow it down even further. We know we've decided to study housing, but there's so many different topics that we can narrow down housing into. So we can talk about a new house or problems in a house or cleaning a house or yard work. Now, if I was in the classroom, I'd have these pictures displayed on 4 different walls in my classroom. And we'd walk around together and we'd talk about the pictures we see. I would gauge their responses and their interest. And they will also have an opportunity to vote at one point. But first, we have to get them familiar with all of these different possible modules that we will cover. So because they're a literacy foundation or a low-level literacy that I'm planning for here, I'm not going to do 10 or 13 different modules that are unrelated in a term. What I'm going to do is a few different modules under each theme so that all that foundational work I've done with building vocabulary and learning those things will not be used up so quickly. So if I'm teaching a housing theme, I'm going to teach the first couple of weeks, I'm going to teach the basic vocabulary and some sentence patterns and some important foundational information. And then when I go on from there, I don't have to reteach that again and again and again. Excuse me. So as I was saying, I would put this up on 4 different walls and talk about it. So when I'm doing this online, what I'll do is bring up one of my posters or a number of pictures related to that module. And I'll ask the students, we'll talk about it. And each one has proven in the past to be of interest to students. We're just at a good time of the year right now to introduce yard work and gardening, one of my favorite topics. And from there, we'll do a little bit of voting again, but we'll make sure that we're somewhat familiar with these 4 modules. And then I will introduce our module needs assessment, which without support in the class is quite wordy actually, and I wouldn't expect my students to be able to fill this out on their own. What I would do is help them out and show the pictures, and then they get to vote. So now that I've switched to online, I'm not going to present this paper to them. I will share the results of this vote with them afterwards, but I will introduce the concept of choosing 3 things about housing that they might be interested in. I hope everybody's doing okay and following along. Okay, I'll go to the next slide. Yes, and here we are, following PBLA prescriptives. I have done my needs assessment, my thematic needs assessment, and my module needs assessment. And so now it's time to build my module, planning with the end in mind. And I'm going to plan here my assessments. And I've put the images of the ESL for All and the CLB book there, because that's what I use when I'm building my module. But when I'm building my module plan, and I look at the profiles of ability and check those all out when I am planning my assessments. So I'm planning what my students are going to be able to do under the topic of housing in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. I determine all that before I even start teaching. This is page 1 of a 5-page document that I do whether I'm teaching in class or online. And as I said earlier, I'm doing my first week or 2 or less, depending on what the students need actually, of just general knowledge and skill building and vocabulary building in that way, so that we have a nice foundation upon which to start. And now I am going to show you the assessments that we built. And I expect a bit of challenge here, so I'm going to anticipate that and address it. Oh, but before I address that, I want to show you this text message I got from my colleague and friend, Laura. It was a Sunday evening, and we were texting each other, and I was asking her what she was doing. So that's why this says Sunday evening activities for a LINC teacher. Sundays have always been a busy day, but they're a lot busier now that we're online. So I'll just read this for you because it makes me laugh. So Laura was saying it takes forever when it is submitted in 21 ways, including Drive, Doc, WhatsApp, Gmail, embedded in Arabic cooking videos, Bollywood YouTube, and carrier pigeon. Not based solely on this text, but based on our experience, we knew that, well, not we, I mean my managers knew that it was best to choose one way to collect and store evidence for all of the instructors at our school. If we were all using different platforms and different ways to do this, then it would sort of inhibit collaboration, and collaboration is really important right now. So we wanted to be able to share all sorts of things. We did the first few weeks just with Zoom, which is great for listening and speaking. And we knew that we had to introduce another way to our students so that they could do some reading and writing assessments. We want to benchmark our students, so we are still following our funding agreement, and we're providing the students with the proper number of contact hours, and we're doing the proper amount of assessments with them. So now is when I expect a little bit of kickback, but I can't hear you. So here we go. We are using Google Classroom. So the teachers are definitely using Google Classroom, and of course not all the students are using Google Classroom, and I would tell you that very few foundational students are using it. But it is a place to store and collect all of the evidence and build the assessments for the instructors. So this would be my cover page on an assessment I might give in class, and it talks about the task and the competency and the criteria for success and the rubrics, and I would introduce many of these ideas in class to my students by showing them projecting my task assessment onto my smartboard. But now what I'm going to do with the students is I'm going to talk about it. And I also have a place where I can store everything. I can also put the student results in there. I can put the students' answers in there. In my Google Drive, I have a folder for each student, and I can share this with my colleagues and they can share with me. So it is a great place to house everything. The upper levels are working well, some very well, and some okay with Google Classroom, but with the lower levels, most of them have not got onto it. But again, this is how we're housing all our assessments. So I'm going to show you the 4 assessments that I created for the housing theme. And these would be in the first couple of weeks. So this was all housed in Google Classroom, but it wasn't presented in that way, and they didn't have to type into their computer. Now, of course, with a foundation level literacy class, I'm not really assessing whether or not they can type. I'm assessing their handwriting, whether they can form the letters, if they know the spacing, and this is a real challenge for some of our students. So I would share with them, I would share an image that said full name and ask them to write that. Now, of course, this is after a bunch of scaffolding and practicing. This is certainly not the first time. And this format is going to be introduced to them with a number of different practices. I've changed my phone number there, guys, so you can't phone me. So, but this is the final product. The final product would be that they have written their name, their address, and their phone number on a piece of paper. We would be doing this live, so we would be in a Zoom classroom together, and they would have their video cameras on, and I would be able to see them all doing this. And after they did it, I would ask them to send me a picture. So it's been my experience, and based on the number of webinars that I've attended in the last little while, almost all of the students do have mastery over sending pictures on their phone. So we're really lucky about that. And what I can do with this final product is that I can embed it in the assessment in Google Classroom, and I have therefore collected my evidence, which is another important part of PBLA. At this point, most of my action-oriented feedback is going to be verbal. I do have my own anecdotal notes, but I am giving the students feedback and asking them to work on certain things or telling them what they're really good at and how to improve. So that would be the writing assessment, which I think is on level for a Literacy 1 class. And this is my reading assessment. So it looks, you know, a little bit intimidating looking at it like this. But again, the first page has nothing for the students to fill out. But I am going to be transparent with them and let them know what I'm looking for and what mark they need to be successful in this assessment. And there's a great opportunity in Google Classrooms to use a lot of images. This is a picture of my school in Calgary, Ties, on a beautiful sunny day like it is today. And we will have again scaffolded and practiced all the format of this assessment. But in the assessment itself, I would share a picture on Zoom, and they'd be familiar with this chart and how it's organized. And it's a multiple choice question, and the question just asks for the city, and they have to pick A, B, or C. For this assessment, it will be 3 questions. So before we even do the assessment, I'm going to ask them on a piece of paper to write their name and the numbers 1, 2, 3. And they're going to show me that they've already done that and they have mastery over the first steps in the assessment so that they're not getting confused by the format. Rather, they are able to address the question directly. So this is what it looks like a little bit bigger, and this is what I expect as a response from the students. They have, after I share each picture with them, and ask for their answer. I will go back and review it, and that's why everything is color coded so that they don't get confused. Oh no, I answered this one incorrectly. We know that number one is city, and that's blue, and number two is province, and that's pink, and number three is address, and that's green. And after they've finished, I'm going to ask them to take a picture and send it to me.